Hello, and welcome to Turning the Tables. We call this Cooking to Thrive in the 21st Century because this series focuses on creating food that promotes health on both an individual and an environmental scale. We're learning master recipes designed to work with whatever you have on hand, with plenty of local and plant-based whole food ingredients. Cooking this way generates vitality and reduces environmental impacts. Flexibility in the kitchen unlocks endless flavor opportunities and makes eating a nutritionally balanced, eco-friendly food fun and intuitive. This series is sponsored by Cornell Cooperative Extension Ulster County and the Ellenville Rural Regional Healthcare Network and Stick to Local Studios. I'm Maria Reidelbach. So today we're going to be learning the master recipe to make cookies. Now this way you can have one recipe and you can make all of these different kinds of cookies, different flavors, shapes. It's fun. What do you need to make these cookies? You need some butter, oil, or other fat. You need some flour or meal. You can use many different kinds. You need eggs. You need some kind of sweetener. Honey, syrup, sugar, sucanat. You need some flavorings like maybe nuts or cinnamon, other spices, cocoa, some decorations, of course, because they're cookies, and some simple equipment, a bowl, a measuring spoon, a spoon or a spatula, a knife, a rolling pin, a cookie sheet, some parchment paper, maybe an electric mixer. Don't have to have that, but it's very helpful. And an oven. The method is to first take your softened butter and mix whatever powdered sweetener you're using and your salt. And then once those are beautifully creamed, then you want to add some eggs and whatever type of flour or meal you're using. You'll prep that into different kinds of shapes and colors, depending on what kind of cookies you want. And then you'll bake them in a 350-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes, maybe more, depending on what kind of cookie. So here are all the ingredients that we're using. We've got flours, we've got sweetener, we've got a room temperature egg, we've got some butter, and some tools put together. First step, mix that 2 sticks of butter with 3/4 cup of sweetener, half teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of vanilla or other liquid flavoring. Now, of course, you can use all different kinds of flavorings, and we can talk about that a bit later. Now, I'm going to take the butter and put it into the bowl. Just putting that in. I'm folding up that butter wrapper in order to save it to butter pans, future pans. So putting in that second stick of butter. It is important that this butter is at room temperature. You want it nice and soft. It makes it much easier to work with. You can see how soft it is. It's very bendy. Putting that in there and folding up that packet. So I'm going to take my my mixer. It happens to be just about 70 years old, and I am still running like a champ. I'm going to mix up the butter, make it nice and creamy. And as you can see, that happens really quickly. And turning up the mixer now a little higher. And I'm spinning the butter off of the beaters there in order to kind of clean it up a little bit. Now I'm adding the sugar bit by bit. Here we go, just kind of putting that in there, getting it all nice and mixed. You want this all to be like very nice and creamy. So here we go. Getting that all mixed in. So it's putting a little bit of air in there too. The sugar crystals cut the butter up if you're interested in the microscopic view. It helps to have a spatula at this point. I'm just going to take that and clean that bowl up. Now you could do this all with a wooden spoon. It's a fair amount of work, but you know, if your butter's nice and soft, it's not terrible. There goes that salt that I forgot to put in with the sugar. It's okay. And now I'm going to put in a little bit of vanilla. I'm going to measure that to make sure I don't use too much, but I do like a fair amount of vanilla. And it's good to use real vanilla because really it's the flavor that you're after. Artificial vanilla is made out of pine needles. Yep. And I think they call it natural vanilla flavoring, but it's not. So here we go, beating that in nicely. Now we go to the next step, which is adding a room temperature egg, adding 2 3/4 cup flour or meal, and adding any dry flavor ingredients like maybe nuts or cocoa, could be a variety of things. You want that egg to be room temperature because if it's cold and it hits that butter, it's going to make the butter hard again. So that's going to work against that creaminess that you're after. So here we go, just kind of mixing that up. And eggs are water-based and butter's fat-based, so they don't necessarily want to mix right away, but it's not too difficult either. So using my spatula there to make sure there isn't any unmixed material at the bottom of the bowl. And it really helps to be thorough with this kind of thing, especially when baking. Baking is a bit pickier than other kinds of cooking. It's really kind of a lot more chemistry involved. So we're going to add the flour a bit at the time. And we want to just do this until it's mixed in. So we're I'm going to use a little more. And a little more. So as I was saying, you can use a variety of different flours and meals with this recipe. I have done it with almond flour. I've done it with garbanzo bean flour. I've done it with cornmeal, 100% cornmeal. They all work. If you use something like rolled oats, I think you're going to want to like spin that in your blender first to make it more like a flour. And I think when you're experimenting with new grains to use, you also maybe want to go half and half with a grain that you're used to working with, like regular wheat flour. So there we go. It's getting all mixed in. I have made cookies with 100% rye flour that were really, really delicious. They were rye and fennel cookies. I like them. If you can get a high extraction whole wheat flour, those make really good cookies. That's what I'm using here. High extraction means that some of the bran has been taken off, but the germ and the starch are intact. So you get most of the fiber and you get all the protein. And it's not quite so, chaffy or, doesn't have that floor sweeping quality from whole wheat flour. So here we go. I mean, these are cookies, so we want them to be special and light and fun. So now it's starting to really become dough-like. There we go. That's the last of it. So getting that all mixed in, making sure that got all the bits. You can see little dry spots there that I'm working in. Starting to crawl up the beaters now. That little Dormy mixer still chugging along. I'll tell you, it kicks butt. So I'm just holding my hand there so that I'm not splattering my kitchen with cookie dough. And cleaning the beaters now. So it used to be that you could lick the beaters off or give them to a small child to lick off. But sad to say, those days have passed because of salmonella on raw eggs. It's just not a good idea, unless you like to live dangerously. Though there are many other substances to imbibe if you want to do that, that might be more fun. So cleaning off that cookie dough. Soon we will be imbibing cookies. Getting that all out of the beaters. And getting ready for the next step, which is going to be preparing the cookie dough. So we've got this nice soft cookie dough all mixed up. And cleaning off that other beater. The next step is to prep the cookie dough. So this is really a fun part. This is about shaping it, embellishing it, starting to get creative with it. There's all kinds of fun examples out there on the internet of cookies. There's your standard refrigerator cookie, which you make a long bar and then you slice it. And then there are rolled cookies where you can roll your dough out and cut it into fun shapes with cookie cutters after you've rolled it out. Now, I'm going to be emphasizing ways of decorating cookies that don't depend on adding a lot more sugar, because we want these to not be too terribly unhealthy, just unhealthy enough. So pulling out one of my favorite tools is parchment paper. It really helps keep things clean and keeps cleanup to a minimum. And I'm going to just cut this piece in half and plop some dough onto it. Now, this is a good time to channel your inner child, because this is like working with Play-Doh when you were a kid. So what we're going to, this is pretty soft right now, so what we're going to do is just kind of shape it into a nice log shape. And of course your hands are clean because you've washed them first. And I'm using this parchment paper to roll this up. Here we go. Getting nice and round. And shaping it a bit more. And one thing that you can use that could help is a sushi mat. So we're going to use that to keep those edges nice and straight. There's all kinds of kitchen tools that you can use in different ways, and I exhort you to just keep thinking about it. It's so much fun to come up with new things to use. There we go. And the next step will be to add some beautiful pink and white and red jimmies. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of put this right out onto the parchment and then just roll it. So you just want to be very gentle with this so that you don't distort your tubular shape very much, your cylindrical shape, I guess it's better to call it. So you can get all different kinds of jimmies, of course, all different colors. You can also do this with dried herbs. You can do it with cocoa. You could do it with, I don't know, probably crushed coffee beans would be good, right? Um, you know, different kinds of cracked herbs. I suggest that if you're experimenting with spices, that you just try a little bit in your mouth first and see how strong it is, because you don't want to, you know, blow someone away with too much flavor. But really, there are so many different things that you can use in this. Crushed nuts, of course, are nice, or crushed candy canes around the holidays, crushed hard candy. Um, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can do. So now I've got it all pretty much covered, and I'm just going to roll it up tightly and put it in the refrigerator to chill. So you want these to chill for a good couple of hours. And here we go. This one has been coated with lemon verbena, that one with nuts, and that's the first one we did with the jimmies. So the next part is really super easy. Take your knife and cut them into cookies. Now you're going to want to cut that end piece off. That's the cook's cookie. And then slice them just about 1/8 of an inch thick. You don't want to go any thicker because otherwise they'll spread. If you cut them at 1/8 of an inch, they'll grow just a little bit in the oven. And what I like to do is give it to just 1/4 of a turn each time you cut, because as you're cutting, even though it's chilled and it's firm, it's going to distort a little bit. So if you keep turning it, you keep that distortion even around the edges. So here we go. Take your time and just cut it up. Then you can take your cut cookies, line your sheet pan with some parchment. Now I know you see me using lots of parchment here, but I use my parchment over and over again. You can wipe it off and send it back into the oven with another batch of cookies. So don't think it's the end of it once you've used it once. So just setting those about 1 inch apart, could probably put them a little closer. So the first batch of cookies is always a little bit of a crapshoot. You really want to keep an eye on them in the oven, and also check your time with the first batch so that you know how long you're going to take with subsequent batches, because you know each stove is different, and sometimes stoves are different on different days depending on the temperature and the humidity and all those other mysterious factors. So cookies, usually you're going to make more than one batch, so do check the time, and make some notes on your recipe. Write on your recipe. I'm a big advocate of writing notes down. It really helps for the next time, because you think you're going to remember, but you might not. So here we go with those nutty rounds. I think this is so pretty. Cleaning off the cutting board there a little bit. And now I've got our pink and red and white cookies. Again, cutting those 1/8 of an inch thick, giving it that 1/4 turn, slight turn in between. Now I notice that this one is kind of square. Somehow it sagged in the fridge or something. So I'm just going to gently squeeze it back into a more circular shape. Now you can make these cylinders any shape you want. Really, you can make them square, you can make them triangular, um, and as you'll see later, you can also use different colors of dough and make patterns in your cookies, which is so much fun. So we've got all these cookies, and those are all panned up. Now we're going to make a different kind of cookie. We're going to use a little bit of food coloring to make a marbleized effect with our dough. And this is a nice way to add some color to your cookies without adding extra sugar. So just use a little food coloring. You want to go easy on this. It is a food additive, pretty safe one, but it's good practice just to kind of stay away from, use less of this kind of thing than other kinds of food. So I'm mixing this in and checking out the color. And I think I want to make it a little darker because I'm going to be mixing it in with that other white cookie dough, and I want to have a bit of a contrast. So I'm going to just add a little more of that red food color. We seem to be on a red and pink kick today. And again, using my fingers. Your hands and your fingers are your most versatile kitchen tool. I really recommend using them to do things. Not only can they clean spatulas and take little tastes, but you can check a temperature, you can check a texture. They're great for manipulating all kinds of things. They are just truly a wonderful thing in the kitchen. All right, so here we go. We've got this nice kind of deep pink dough here. And so what we're going to do, got my another piece of parchment, is take some of the plain vanilla dough and just work it into a bit of a patty. And take the tinted dough and just smear that right on top of that patty. Okay. So I'm just going to smush that out a bit. And again, this is all grade school Play-Doh stuff, right? You know how to do this. It's good, clean fun. So I'm going to smush that up, not mix it entirely, but just mix it a little bit to give it a beautiful marbled effect. It does really feel good to play with dough. So there we go. Looked like there was too much white there, so I put my thumb in it. So I'm just going to smush this out a little bit. Then I am going to pick the jimmy off of it that it picked up. Jimmies are like glitter. They go everywhere. And putting another piece of parchment paper on top. Now, I used to use wax paper to roll out dough, but in recent years, wax paper has gotten really crummy. It just isn't the same. I don't know what they did, but it just falls apart now, even just once. So I've switched to using parchment for rolling things out. But you could also use some saran wrap. Or if you don't have either, you can use flour on your countertop. So I'm going to make that again about 1/8 of an inch thick. If you don't know what 1/8 of an inch is, just, find a ruler. But it's about as thick as 2/4 together. 2 quarter, coins. So here we go. We got that really beautiful marbleized cookie dough. It reminds me of beautiful Venetian marbleized paper. And it's all loosened there now from the backing. And now we can cut it out with our cookie cutters. So we've got a beautiful little multi-pointed star there that I really like. And I'm just going to cut as many of those out as I can fit, placing it close together. So of course there are all kinds of cookie cutters. You can even make your own cookie cutters if you want to out of a little bit of sheet metal from the hardware store, but you need to be careful because the edges are sharp. Here we go. Now you can just take all of your extra dough and ball it up again and roll it out again. And you might want to give it another chill as well. I'm going to make another kind of marbleized dough with some dough that I've mixed cocoa in with. I just love that dark brown color with a paler colored contrast like pink or pale green or blue or yellow. So trying a different way to marbleize them this time. I'm just rolling out these long cylinders just for fun, just fooling around, listening to some nice music, sticking those together. So I'm just going to like twist those up a bit and see what happens with this different technique to see if I get a different kind of marbleizing pattern. So because they were long and thin, I'm not going to mix them up as much. I want more of a contrast this time and less blending. So here we go. Again, I'm rolling that out. And I am chilling this after I roll it out. You don't need to chill it for 2 hours because it's so thin, but you do want to chill it until it's nice and cold. There we go, about 1/8 of an inch thick. As you can see, the pattern is very different on each side. It's kind of cool. So you can imagine what you could do with this. You could take little colored balls, little small ones, and make something that is many colors, and you could have stripes that are wiggly. There's all kinds of fun things that you could do. Here we go, putting those cookies out. And there's my State of New York cookie cutter. Got to cut out a state of New York or two. If I knew what New York's theme song was, I would hum it right now, but I have no idea. And there I go, cutting a backwards state of New York because that's what fits, but I'm going to flip it over and put it right side up. And I'm going to cut another one. And there we go. We've got another pan of marbleized cookies, this time with chocolate. Now, if I wanted to, I could have, maybe mixed a little bit of, cherry flavoring in with these cookies to match the pinkness. And they would be cherry chocolate. You do need to be pretty careful, though, with extracts, because if they are labeled natural flavoring, that actually means that they're artificially flavored. Since the 1980s, they've changed the law about labeling things artificially flavored so that a flavoring can be made out of anything but petroleum and it can be called natural flavor. So, as I mentioned earlier, vanilla is made from pine needles, and that's the artificial vanilla. And real vanilla is made from a plant that's a relative of the orchid. So here we go. This one's really fun. This is a refrigerator slicing cookie, and I've always loved this one. This is how you make checkerboard cookies. So I'm just going to make sure those are all just about the same thickness. And this is where a little bit of precision helps. And then I'm going to stack them up, alternating the colors. There we go. We got a nice sandwich kind of thing going on. And I'm just going to flatten it some more. And just smushing that together with my hands a little bit, checking it out to make sure that they're all pressed together nicely and there are no spaces. Giving it one more little roll there. Make sure it's all, that's just a light rolling. And now I'm going to trim it. That's not quite even yet. There we go. So now we've got a nice flat edge. And you can see it's got these beautiful stripes. I love this technique. So all these little trimmings will become cookies. Because, of course, you have to eat the ones that are not quite perfect. It's the cook's prerogative. So I think what I'm going to do is cut just a couple of striped ones first because I like them so much. And again, cutting those 1/8 of an inch thick. So cool. Now I'm going to make the checkerboard. So you just cut it in half the long way. And you can use a ruler if you want to do this. I'm kind of winging it here, but it does help to use a ruler. Then you cut each half in half. If you're making like a four grid. So then what you do is you restack them and you alternate again. You flip each one and you put them all together. And then just make sure they're stuck a bit. And there you go. Look at that. There's our checkerboard. Now I can see that it's more of a rectangle and I want it to be a square. So I'm just kind of smushing it down there a little bit and kind of flattening it out to make sure the edges are nice and flat. I'm using the flat of my knife to give it some shape. And now I'm going to cut it. So again, these have been very well chilled. And if it takes you long enough to work it that you feel like they've started to get warm, before you cut it, put it back in the fridge or the freezer for a little bit. So there we go. Still a little bit rectangular-ish, but I'm going to live with it. So as I said before, you can make all different kinds of patterns with this. You could make spiral cookies, you can make target cookies, you can make a flower. There are all kinds of examples. So here we go, just putting these on the prepared sheet pan with a piece of parchment on it, about 1 inch apart, but they aren't going to spread that much. So there we go. Those are ready to go in. Now I'm going to roll this up and put it away. And the next cookie we're going to make is a bar cookie. So I'm taking this dough that I had marbleized previously, and it got a little muddy looking. And so it's not going to make a very pretty cookie. So I've decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it as a base for some bar cookies. So what you want to do is you want to put this cookie dough into the bottom of your pan. And I am going to roll it out and cut it. But you know, you could just as easily put it in your pan and just smush it in with your fingers. Won't be quite as even, but you know, who's going to know? So just going to like roll that out a bit, make it nice and even. And I'm going to take my little pan there. What I'm using is a Pyrex leftover container, which I've discovered make really great little pans when you need them. So here we go. I'm just going to put a little piece of parchment in there to make sure that doesn't stick, and I'm going to put that in the bottom. Now I've got some caramel sauce that was left over from another project. And you could use, besides caramel sauce, you could use things like jam or maybe a little chocolate syrup, something sticky, and just kind of smear that in there. And make sure that it goes all the way to the edges. And when I used to eat candy bars, my favorite candy bar was the Payday, because it was so simple. It was just caramel and salted peanuts. So that's what I'm going to go for today. I'm going to like put this beautiful caramel in here. And I'm not putting too much in. As you can see, it's fairly thin in spots. You don't want to like totally load it up or your cookies will just be gloopy. You want this to kind of firm up and become a layer that behaves itself and doesn't drip. So there we go. And it's probably about, I don't know, probably 1/8 of an inch or so. And now I'm going to take these roasted salted peanuts and I am just going to sprinkle those on top. Now you could use any kind of nut for this. With peanuts, you're going to want to make sure they're roasted first, but with other nuts, it's not as important. They'll roast in the oven. Peanuts just take an extra long time to roast because, of course, they aren't really nuts. They're actually beans. And even weirder, they're beans that grow underground. It's amazing. Like, what happens with the peanut plant is that it grows up, it gets a blossom, the blossom starts to fruit, it drops to the ground, and then starts growing underground. It's wild. Anyway, peanuts are a really delicious food and a great protein source and not too expensive. So they are really an awesome superfood. So here we go, just loading that up with as many peanuts as I can. So now you're going to bake your cookies in a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. Those bar cookies are going to take longer because they are a bit thicker, and you're going to want to make sure they're bubbling all the way to the middle. And you can see the way the light's hitting it. You can see all the cookies bubbling. Now here are some of the pan cookies. There's one that I cut extra thin, which got a little too brown. That's going right into my mouth. That one's just a little brown around the edge, but the rest of them look pretty good. So, I'm checking them out so that my next batch, I'll know how long to cook them. I think these were probably in the oven a minute too long, but they are nice and firm. Because cookies only take a short time to cook, you really kind of gotta watch them. So there we go. So here's an example of all the different cookies we made. Really, really good.